With a tough schedule, things could be really difficult for Boston College in 2025, but I'm going to tell you, I think the ceiling could be higher than you expect.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black of Eagle Insider, part of the 247 Network. Thank you all who have made Locked On Boston College your first listen every day, because today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. On today's show, I am opening up that big old mailbag of questions you guys asked me on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, everywhere. I had questions. I wanted to get them answered, and you guys are asked some great ones. We're going to get into them. We're going to talk about the offensive line. Who steps up this year? You want to know about that? Who do I think is the best positional group that we had seen so far, and who I project out to be the best positional group? And then just questions about the future of BC football this year and beyond. So let's kick it off. I want to go to one question, and I know it was like, I believe he asked it on multiple platforms. So Dawson Torpy on YouTube asked me, what's the ceiling and floor for BC's team realistically this year? Now, you want to talk to some fans, they're going to tell you 10-2. And I don't think that is a realistic ceiling for BC. For me, I just think that would be an amazing, a all-time BC year. You're talking, Doug Flutie-esque, you'd be in the playoffs type of year for BC. I don't see that yet with this team. That being said, I am not negative with where this team can be. I think 8 regular season wins is not out of the question. Now, you have 3 very difficult playoff teams from last year with Notre Dame and Clemson specifically, and then SMU on top of that, that might make things a little bit more challenging than what you had last year. But I look at what BC has. Bill O'Brien last year won 7 games with a team that really wasn't his, with starting a quarterback that really wasn't his, and Thomas Castellanos. And, he really was able to maximize things, especially as the year went on. So now the team is his. He's got Grayson James and Dylan Lonergan at quarterback. He's building up the depth at a lot of key positions. I look at 8 wins. That's my ceiling right now with this team. I don't think 9 is like really realistic right now. Regular season, maybe they can get 9 in a bowl. But when you have those 3 playoff teams, you're playing Georgia Tech, you're playing Louisville, you're going to lose to at least one of those teams. So I think 8 wins is fair. Now the floor, I don't think the floor is as low as maybe you've seen in some projections. Brad Crawford of 247, who, one of my cohorts, he's usually pretty tough on BC. I think he had BC at 4-8. And another analyst who I talked to on DM, and I'm not going to give his name away because we were just chatting off the record, he said, I look at that record, I see 4-8 right away. I think that's tough because I think BC is better than 4-8. To me, the floor on this team is 5-7, which is still not something you guys want to hear. Because say you end up losing all 3 of those playoff caliber teams. You lose to Georgia Tech. You lose to Louisville. And now you're looking at 7-5 as the highest you could go without screwing anything else up. Maybe the defensive line doesn't work. The offensive line struggles. I'm not sure. So 5-7 to me is the floor. Now, someone asked, and I'm going to get their name. It's on Instagram, and it's DPDP2288. We have an Instagram account. It's Eagle Insider on there if you ever want to check us out. And he asked, where do you see the team going in the next few years, the same as it's been, or possible playoff ACC contender? Well, first of all, as long as Bill O'Brien's still here, I think the projection is going to continue to go up. But the big question for me, what I would be watching for, is the development at quarterback. This league is such a quarterback-centric sport. Like, you don't have a good quarterback, you're not going to get that far. BC has, as I've crowed, has done a good job in the last 365 days of really undoing what Jeff Hafley did. Like really looking at Jeff Hafley's room and saying, okay, Grayson James is basically the lone wolf left. And then everyone else they've kind of moved on from. They brought in Dylan Larnigan. They are working on DJ Bordeaux for class of 2026, potentially Femi Babalola. They're building out that depth. Bill O'Brien, if he gets the right quarterbacks that work in his system, can get BC to another level. I'm not sure if they will become a playoff caliber team. You also have to think when you're thinking playoffs for the ACC, the new playoffs are going to be set up so that it's really slanted against the ACC. Like they're getting 2 spots while the SEC and Big Ten are getting 4 guaranteed spots. So that's going to make it harder. But I look at where BC is going, what they've been doing so far, and I have to say I'm impressed. I like what they've done on the recruiting trail. They have a top 20 team right now. I'm not expecting it to be that high, but you look at the quality of recruits they're bringing in, and it does catch your attention that this is going to build out depth moving forward and help you win games when you 2 to 3 years down the line. I would love to see BC in the ACC hunt, but I worry that given the rift between the haves and the have-nots continue to grow. Florida State is waking from their slumber. Miami clearly is waking from their slumber. It's going to be a lot harder. And you got to hope that Father Jack Butler has a different view of how athletics needs to be run at BC. If he sees that what BC is doing right now is not going to help them win and decides to change, whether that is making looser admissions, which maybe not happen, well, most likely the bigger issue is NIL. But to fix that piece so that players are more interested in coming to Boston College, that will help. So it's hard to gauge out 3 years from now because you're going to have a new president. You have all this new legislation. I mean, right before I hit record, there's something about a new contract they're going to make all the Power 4 programs sign that basically prevents them from suing the NCAA and all these other things, or kicks them out of their Power 4 conferences. It's crazy how much things are going to change. And I expect, lots of news to come out this summer. So, long story short, do I see BC in the ACC title hunt? Probably not. But if the ACC can still hang on and not just get 2 spots, yeah, maybe if there's like a 3rd spot at some point, BC's in the top 25, maybe they could get to the playoffs. But there's a lot of work to do. They have a lot of work to do to get to that point, to get us to talk about that. But let's get to 8 wins first. All right. In our second segment, I'm going to talk about best positional group and a question about running backs that someone on Facebook had. I want to talk about that in just a moment. Sorry, having technical difficulties here. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't miss moments. If you're a Knicks fan, you are flying high, and Indianapolis is ready for you. It was a great series, and I know a lot of you watched it. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Eastern Conference Finals, you got the Pacers playing the best basketball in the NBA right now. They just made Cleveland look foolish. But you get the defensive-minded Knicks who stifled the Celtics. It's a 4-point spread in favor of the Knicks because it's at Madison Square Garden. I'm not giving any betting advice, but I'm feeling good about the Pacers. And yes, I'm a hater. But I think that's what I mean, like right now, I can just go in there. I can make my parlays. I can look at, how many points do I think Jalen Brunson's going to get, and add that in with points before the first half. And you get your parlay and see if you can get that going. So, are you new to FanDuel? It's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonuses. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook betting partner of the NBA. This is Locked On Boston College. I am your host, AJ Black, and I want to shout out all my everydayers, all of you folks that make Locked On Boston College your first listen every single day. You guys have made this site, this podcast grow exponentially, and I hear from you every day. And you send messages, you send, comments, and I appreciate it. And I love that there's a community of Boston College fans out there that really want Boston College news, and you're in the right spot for it. Now, we had a question. This one came from G Belden 22 on Instagram, and he asked, "What position are we strongest at as of right now?" So, if I was to go out there and guess, if I was to look at one position, and I said that position has me feeling good, it's the secondary. Now, we had on Mike Sidley, who was also at practice. I've also was there too, and we were both kind of in agreement that there's good top end talent on that secondary. You got guys like Amari Jackson, Carter Davis, KP Price. KP Price is the most underrated player on this team. Let me tell you that right now. Like, all ACC is written all over him. You have all that. And then you add in freshmen like TJ Green, Ashton Cunningham, to go with the Isaiah Ferrises, the Cameron Martinez. Like, there's just good depth there. You don't have to worry about a guy going down and then you have nothing because, as I said, with Max Tucker, Ashton McShane, they're there. But then you're bringing back Amari Jackson, who could be your best cornerback. So I look at the secondary. I worry that as good as they are, if BC can't muster any sort of pass rush, it's going to make them, leave them out on an island against good wide receivers at times. But I also think they're good enough to also make a lot of good plays that will help mask potential issues at other positions on that defensive line. There was another question, speaking of defense, on Twitter, and it was Bill O'Brien is building a monster. He had me ask a whole bunch of questions, so I want to answer at least one of them. Bill O'Brien is building a monster. Ask who's going to be the guy at middle linebacker wearing that green dot helmet, Hewlett or Bam Crouch? I think I am almost positive it's going to be Bam Crouch. Going to practice during camp, he had the headset on, even when he wasn't on the field. I mean, he didn't practice, but he was out there, talking to the defense, doing all that kind of stuff. He's been around. He's a leader. This is his fourth year. Hewlett just joined. He hasn't even practiced with them. I don't expect him to come in and be the voice of communication on that defense because that would put him in a really tough spot. I think he's got to more blend in and learn that defense. I think he'll be more of an outside linebacker, either weak or strong, and figure things out from there. So I think Bam, he's been around. He knows the system. He's going to be the guy with the green dot. So thank you. Bill O'Brien is building a monster. We also had a question from Oliver Lee on Twitter. Oliver Lee asked me, any concern with BC's road record last year? So that's a great question. So you had one neutral site loss. You lost to Louisville at home. And then you lost to Missouri. You lost to Virginia Tech and Virginia. So that's 3 of your 5 losses came on the road. Let's break down those losses. Okay. Nebraska doesn't count because it's a neutral site. You lost to Virginia Tech, and that was just a matchup hell. You ran into Byshell Tootin, who, as you just saw with the NFL draft, he run like a 4.3. Was the fastest running back in the class, and you just didn't have the speed to match with that. It was a major issue. You just couldn't stop him. And every time you were able to do something, and credit to the offense at times that just kind of jumped back into it, Tootin just killed you. And so I don't think of that as like a systemic issue. Maybe team speed might be an issue, but that was just running into a really good player that has been giving you fits for years now. I look at the Virginia loss as what the heck was Thomas Castellanos doing game. They lost that game because Castellano, that was the first game where we watched Thomas Castellanos just this year. And you saw, I mean, for me, it was that game where I first watched and went, oof, I don't think he's going to fit. He's the right fit for this offense. Lots of issues. There was that fumble that he just handed the ball to Jonas Sanker. You got beat on I think it was Ashton McShane, who was a true freshman against Malachi Fields, one of the best wide receivers in the ACC. And that was it. That's all it was, really. It wasn't like you got beat. It was like, well, you got beat, but like you had a quarterback that just wasn't working and you had some small issues elsewhere. And I think there was a ton of turnovers, and that was it. So that didn't really concern me. And then Missouri, I mean, they were a top 10 team when you faced them. You still held your own there. So I don't think so yet. I like to see more. I need a bigger sample size, is what I'm going to say here. And that's my thoughts. That's my thoughts on that question. So thank you, Oliver. And then we're going to end this segment with this part of the segment with a question from Clayton Truder. Clayton's an author. You can check out his book. It's on Twitter. And he asked me, rank the 6 New England states in terms of the toughness of their residents. How would Maryland rank if it were a New England state? Okay, so if I'm going to go with the weakest state, like the state that doesn't intimidate me the most, I'm going with Vermont. And I'm going to go with just stereotypes. I just think of them more of a laid-back state, a state that doesn't really give a lot of attitude like some of the states we'll get into a little bit. So there's my bottom. I'm going to go with Rhode Island next, just because, I mean, Rhode Island is a small state too. Like, I don't think of them as nasty people or people with an edge to them. There's nothing wrong with them, but it's just a smaller state. Same thing with Connecticut. That'll be my next state. Connecticut is part New York, part Massachusetts. It feels like you get the split down the middle, whereas some of it's Massachusetts, Boston fans, things like that. I'm a little bit nastier, a little bit more edgy. I'll go put them there. Then I'm going to put New Hampshire. Depends on what part of New Hampshire you're at. There is the grizzly wilderness part of New Hampshire that is very, very tough. But then you get cities like Portsmouth, Manchester, Concord, Durham. They're just like any other city. So I'll put them there. And I'm just being a little bit more biased. Next, I'll put Massachusetts. They're my number 2 in terms of tough. So that's where I'm going to put them. Again, there's certain cities where it's a lot rougher than others in terms of toughness. You get west of the Mass Pike, and it's not that far off from where New Hampshire is, honestly. But you go into the city, some people out there in that city, you get certain areas that are rough. They're just rough. So they're number 2. And I'm going to tell you, number 1 for me is Maine. I'm going to tell you what. I grew up, my grandfather was a hunter, and he had a place up in Maine. And I would go up there, and this place had like barely, I don't think it had running water, some electricity, but I'm going up there as a 9-year-old kid. And he showed me how to shoot guns and, bow and arrows. I was pretty good with the bow and arrow. My gun shooting wasn't great. Ice fishing, and there was nothing 20th century up there. And there's large, large parts of Maine filled with people who just do that kind of stuff. And they're tough. They're tough, tough people. So to me, Maine's number 1. Portland is pulling them down, but the rest of Maine can be really tough. Where would Maryland fall in this? I don't know anything about Maryland, like in terms of people. Like, I've been there a bunch of times. They're nice enough. I guess there's the Bay people. You got Baltimore, which I love The Wire. You guys have seen my GIFs. I'll say they're pretty tough. I mean, Baltimore itself is a tough, tough city. They're probably the people in Baltimore are tougher than probably any of those states I just mentioned. So that's where I'm going with that. So that was just a fun off the topic question. I'm glad you guys asked me that one. I have a little fun when we have these Q&As, right? In our final segment, we had a few questions about the offensive line. I want to make sure I get into that. We'll get into that in just a moment. Welcome back. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black. And when you are finished with this episode, your second listen should be Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin. There's so much changing in college football with the transfer portal and news. You can get it all in a nice 20 to 30 minutes on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you check that out. Spencer's an excellent host. I hope you check that out. Now, we got a question about the offensive line. Donald on Twitter asked, how are they going to offset the losses of Trapillo, Kendall, Conley on the offensive line? And I'm going to jump in because there's more than that question there. So there's that part of the offensive line question. And as I mentioned earlier, Bill O'Brien is a monster, had multiple questions. His second part was breakout candidates on the offensive line not named Jude Bowery or Logan Taylor. So the question on how do you offset that? You have to hope that the loss of those three offensive linemen, Conley, Trapillo, and Kendall, that you have built solid depth up behind them. This isn't going to be a year like 2023 or some of the other years where you're dumping in freshmen that you're just or guys that have never played before and just hoping that they can hold together. Remember, 2023 was the year, or 2022, excuse me, was the year that Trapillo was just basically starting. Kendall was just starting. These guys had no real experience. You're not going to have that. You have guys like Kevin Klein, who's been around for a long time. Dwayne Alec, who's been around for a long time. You have Logan Taylor. You have Jude Bowery. That's four guys right there. All four of them have extensive experience. And for any position, and specifically the offensive line, that is a big deal that you have that much returning talent, guys that have just been around. So that should lessen the pressure with whoever the fifth guy is, who sounds like it's going to be Eric Dougherty. They seem to really like him, but I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. You got Tommy Matheson, who's a Princeton transfer coming in. He's only got 1 year left, so I imagine he's going to be fighting for some spots. You have guys that could also jump in, like Ryan McGow. Like, you have players that maybe are less experienced for that last spot. And honestly, if it's only one spot on your offensive line, you can mask issues there. So to me, the question was, who will be your breakout candidate on the offensive line? And as long as he's playing, Ryan McGow is one that I'm watching for. And I'm not sure where he falls. And so there's a chance that he may not play this year. So if he does at tackle, he's someone I'm going to be watching quite a bit. And I think he could be a fun breakout candidate. And then the rest, like, to say a breakout with those guys, it's hard to tell, like, with players you've already had to say that they're going to break out. I'll say Kevin Klein. Kevin Klein is someone that we haven't really seen a whole lot of. I mean, like, consistency out of. That came here, he was absolutely enormous. I think that when they recruited him, it was Halfley. He was like 350 plus pounds. He was huge. He's slimmed down. He's got himself in game shape. This could be the year that he breaks out. So I'm going to go with Kevin Klein. Thank you for that question. That was a good one. And then we're going to wrap things up with a question from John. Actually, I got two. Johnny Elrod on Twitter asks, which wide receivers are you high on? I love the phrasing of that. I'm not high on anyone, but obviously Lewis Bond. I love Lewis Bond. He's a tough cookie out there. And Reed Harris. Those are two that I'm really high on. And then I'm going to say it again, and I'm just going to keep repeating this all summer. It's going to be my mantra. VJ Wilkins. This dude is something, and he's going to be a major problem for defenses. They got something there. So VJ is one. And I want to also piggyback on what Mike Sidley said. Nedrick Bolden. I think he's got something there too. I don't know how much he's going to play because it's only so many snaps if you're playing a pro style offense with, a whole bunch of wide receivers. But if someone got banged up, Bolden is a guy that could be playing. You look at, like, the difference between the depth that you had last year, where you had Jonathan Montague, not knocking the kid, was just coming over from wide receiver. You had Dino Tomlin, who was just a journeyman. He didn't do a whole lot great. Like, he wasn't like stupendous. He wasn't explosive. Solid player, just, well respected, all that good stuff. But you look at the depth that you have this year. When you're looking at, if Skeet, Reed Harris, and Lewis Bond are the starters, then you have VJ Wilkins, then you have Bolden, you have Samaj Fleming, who we haven't even seen yet. Like, you have a lot of guys coming up that you're watching and going, there's a lot of talent there. So that's my last thought there. And then my final question is from Stale Conti Popcorn on Twitter, who said, will there be a pitch to get non-alumni into alumni? There is little to no advertisement around the city in print, TV, radio, and old school signage. BC did a lot of it during the Tom O'Brien, Ryan Jags years. It prevented a lot of last-minute ticket grabs by away fans. So the signage is out there. Is it great? I think they could definitely do a lot better, but go around on a website. I want to say it's my site. I've seen a whole bunch of ads. I know Boston.com, whenever it's the season, the banner ads are all over the place. The biggest thing that they're putting out there right now isn't TV ads, because I feel like Massachusetts fans, they know what Boston College is, and if you either like them or you hate them. But they're trying to change it, and I feel like they're doing it in a different way. They're putting Bill O'Brien out there. They're paying more for Bill O'Brien right now, BC is, and they're using him as an advertising pitch. That's why you see him having his own podcast. He's on his own radio show. He does his, weekly call-ins to Greg Hill. He's on, WEEI during the season. Like, Bill O'Brien is a recognizable face around he's a Patriots, I don't want to say legend, but he's up there. So Patriots fans all know him. It's hard to get non-BC fans into BC just by selling BC. It's easier to sell BC to non-BC fans by throwing out Bill O'Brien, because Boston fans just respect him. So his media blitz, him getting out there, having his face attached to everything Boston College, honestly, I think is a much more effective marketing tool than throwing a banner up on 128. That's just my thoughts on it. Well, thank you all. Thank you all who asked those questions. There were some great ones. If I didn't get them today, it's the summer. We'll be doing mailbags quite a bit. June is going to be busy in terms of recruiting news, but it's quiet. We're not into summer camp until August, so news will be a little bit quieter. But we'll talk, and I'm going to have more guests on. I was offered to have Mitch Wolf back on, but I'm like, I don't think he has anything to talk about. I wanted to ask you guys some of your thoughts, and that's what we got into here. So it was a fun mailbag. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. Check out Eagle Insider, and you can sign up for a newsletter on there that'll get you your Locked On BC daily podcast every single day. Make sure you sign up and hit that subscribe button. It's totally free up on Eagle Insider. Become a member, get more VIP news and all the insider stuff that you're looking for. And I hope to see you all again tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Boston College. Your team every day.